Okay, and we're live. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you all for joining us for today's program, Resiliency for Business Owners. My name is Devin Glick, and I am a Public Diplomacy Officer at the U.S. Embassy in Nairobi. Today, we have a very special program to talk about the effect of the pandemic on business owners and strategies for entrepreneurs to maintain resiliency. Joining us today, we have William Warshauer, the CEO and President of TechnoServe, which is a nonprofit that works with enterprising people around the world to build competitive farms, businesses, and industries. We are pleased to present today's program with the Organization of Women in International Trade, or as they're known by short, OIT, which is a longtime partner with the embassy. Many of OIT's members, including some who are here today, have participated in US Embassy exchange programs and have helped build business ties through people-to-people connections. Throughout today's program, we encourage everyone listening to send in your questions, and we'll have a chance later on in the program to answer them. For those of you who are joining via Zoom, there is a Q&A button in the bottom of your Zoom window where you can ask your questions. And for those of you who are joining via Facebook Live, please type your questions in the comment section of the video. And to kick off today's program, we have a very special message from Ambassador Kyle McCarter. I think we are missing the audio.
Good afternoon, and welcome to everyone tuning in for today's program on resiliency for business owners. As I'm sure many of you have experienced firsthand, the current pandemic has been a difficult time for businesses and business owners. But I believe in the creativity of entrepreneurs. In fact, I am one. We are resourceful, and we will find a way to adapt and overcome this challenge. And remember, USA Marafiki means the United States stands with you. Researchers from the College of William and Mary calculated that the benefits of trade with the United States contribute nearly 60 billion shillings to the Kenyan economy each year. We will continue to be close trade partners and friends. Through a new free trade agreement, Kenya and American businesses will benefit from increased access to each other's markets, and our consumers will enjoy expanded choice, low prices, higher quality in the marketplace. Today, we're fortunate to have U.S. expert William Warshauer here to share strategies to be resilient entrepreneurs. I'd like to thank him for spending his time with us this day. I would also like to thank the Organization of Women in Trade for being our partners in hosting today's program. Many of their members have traveled to the United States on exchange programs, and they personally brought our countries closer together. I wish you a fruitful discussion, and I look forward to hearing how your businesses adapt and how your businesses thrive.
Great, thank you. So to kick off today's program, I would like to turn the mic and camera over to Caroline Gaffey, who is the president of OIT, the Organization of Women in International Trade. Welcome today, Caroline. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. I'm gonna share my slides. I want to just speak very briefly about OIT, and then we can take up the session with William. We're excited to be able to host this session with the US Embassy. And just a bit about OIT. OIT is the Organization of Women in International Trade, and it was established in the United States in 1989. And it's a global association for women in international trade. OIT is in America, Europe, and Africa. and it operates in chapters. So OIT Nairobi is a chapter member of OIT International. And we were established in Nairobi by the US Embassy in April 2001. Our vision is to empower women to transform communities through global trade. And our mission is promoting the advancement for women in international trade. So what separates us from the other BMOs is that we are in international trade, and that's where we deal with all our programs. We have one audacious goal for the Kenyan woman who is in international trade. And our audacious goal is that by 2030, we want our members to generate 60% of their revenue from export, 60% of their revenues from export. It is a big goal, and we're excited to have that as our goal. And we do that using the 4 of our key objectives, and that is access to markets. As you're aware, the women have an issue with access to markets. So the US Embassy, being one of our partners, helps us deal with some of these goals. Capacity building, which is part of the reason that we're hosting this webinar today, to help our women build their capacity and knowledge, and especially during this time of COVID. Access to finance, we know that in Kenya, only less than 2% of the women own land, which is used as part of collateral to obtain financing. So that is part of the reason we have this as one of our objectives. And the other one is mentorship. Mentorship, just helping us to mentor women to get into global trade, and part of the strategies that we do with different partners, including the US Embassy. We do this and contributing to the SDG goals, number 1, 5, and 10, hoping that we also fit into that global perspective of the SDGs. We operate in sectors, so our women are all in the 5 sectors: manufacturing and energy, technology and innovation, agriculture, services, retail and trade. So our members fit into those sectors of the economy, and each of those sectors is represented by a sector champion who helps to champion the agendas of those key areas as we help our women get into international market. Anyone who is interested to get into more details can visit our website, www.oitnairobi.org. There are details on how you can join and get into those sectors for those who are joining us who are not part of OIT. Now, we also do several programs. I'll quickly go through them just as a part of intro. We have 3 capacity building sessions every month and 1 quarterly program. On the first Tuesday of the month, we have a capacity building session in international trade. On the second Tuesday of the month, we have a fireside chat where we basically talk about success stories of individuals in our membership. The 4th Tuesday, we talk about, we have a trade talk where we talk about an African exporter who has succeeded in exports, learning from them, and also seeing how they can help us achieve our goals. And the quarterly, we have export intelligence sessions that we hold, and investor readiness training for our members. So in detail, in a short detail, that's what we do in our programming. We also have a WhatsApp group for our members, and each day is a themed day. Monday, we have Money Monday, we talk about money. Tuesday, we have Trade Tuesday, we talk about international trade. Wednesday, we have Wisdom Wednesday, where we share some wisdom to our members. Thursday, we do Market Day, where we help our members talk about their businesses and what they're doing and what they'd like to sell to each other. And Friday, we do Tell Us Friday, where our individual members speak about themselves, their businesses, and we help learn from each other. We also have trade missions and conferences. I think Devin has already alluded to some of those that we have done in the past. This year, we are hosting a virtual conference on 20th of August 2020. We hope that you will all join us during this conference, and we'll also have a virtual trade mission on 21st of August 2020. The reason we are hosting this is that we had planned several trade missions and physical conferences, but because of COVID, they're now virtual. So that's part of what we have planned for the year. We also have partner events and programs. We have partners with ITC She Trades. We have Sherry Blair Foundation mentorship program, which happens once The intakes are twice per year, and you get a 1-year mentorship with an international mentor. We have other partners like Vital Voices, Gulf Bank, Goldman Sachs, and obviously the US Embassy, which also helps us with so many of their programs that we help with our members. So those are some of the things that we do at OIT, but for more detail, kindly visit our website. Today, we are very honored to be hosting this session with the US Embassy, and I'd like just to read a very short bio of our speaker today, William Warshauer. He is the president and the chief executive of TechnoServe, a non-profit that works with enterprising people in the developing world to build competitive firms, businesses, and industries. He launched his career at Peace Corps, volunteering at Sierra Leone, and has worked in over 40 countries, meaning he really understands the African continent and the troubles and challenges that we face. He has led initiatives to include the development of a mobile phone-based health information system and 90 million worth of health programming in Africa. Would like to welcome him today to be able to take us through a session where he will speak about resilience and how to remain relevant during this time of pandemic. So we'll invite William to start off the session and take it up from here. Thank you so much. Karibu sana, William. You're on mute.
Thank you so much, Carolyn, for the warm introduction. And I'm going to see if I can make this technology work, which is always a iffy proposition. But are you able to see my slide there? Okay.
Yes,
great. I want to extend my thanks to Ambassador McCarter and the entire team at the U.S. Embassy in Nairobi for inviting me, and to Carolyn and all of her colleagues at OIT. Thank you for co-sponsoring today. It's been one of the many pleasures of getting ready for this. Has been a chance to chat with Carolyn and some of her colleagues at OIT and hear about the wonderful work that they're doing. Very aligned with our own mission. I'm coming to you from Washington, D.C. this morning, and we have been working from home since March, so you're getting me live from my dining room. I hope that next time we can do this in person. I'm normally in Nairobi several times a year, and I hope that I can meet many of you in person soon. I am going to try to talk for about 20 or 25 minutes and try to leave a lot of time for Q&A at the end so we can cover areas that are of interest to you. But what I'd like to do is just briefly introduce TechnoServe, the organization that I'm privileged to lead for the last 6 years. Describe in general how we try to support entrepreneurs around the world, but really spend most of the time and most of the focus in drilling down on how we are trying to support entrepreneurs during this unprecedented time, and sharing some of the tools and some of the strategies that we are using to help the small and medium-sized businesses that we support around the world weather the terrible global pandemic that we're all experiencing right now. We'll try to get to at least one very quick case study that I think always makes things a little bit more real. So just want to make sure that the slides are changing, I hope. Yes?
Yes, they are.
Great, okay. A quick picture of TechnoServe then. As Carolyn mentioned, we're a not-for-profit organization. We were founded 52 years ago with the goal of poverty alleviation. And since 52 years, we have focused on business solutions to poverty. That's a very common way of thinking right now, but 50 years ago, it was a rather radical notion. But our founder and all of us over the years who've been associated with TechnoServe have a strong belief that the best way to help people around the world come out of poverty and stay out of poverty is helping them gain the skills to engage in commercial activity that works on straight commercial terms without a lot of free giveaways and subsidies, so that they can run farms and businesses and become prosperous and remain prosperous. You see our global footprint around the world. We're in about 29 countries, most of them on the African continent, I'm happy to report. And we've got about 1,200 employees scattered across those countries. Over 90% of our employees are working in their country of origin as well. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention how proud we all were last year to be rated. Impact Matters is a rating agency that rates NGOs, and they rated TechnoServe as the #1 nonprofit for fighting poverty. The main way that we track our impact is through these 4 metrics. And the first one at the top is the most important: the financial benefits, the additional attributable financial benefits that our clients realize as a result of working with TechnoServe. So this is a real honest and thorough attempt to try to isolate the benefits that we're able to help people realize. So if we work with a business that's been growing historically at a 5% rate, and after we work with them, the business continues to grow at 5%, we would count that as a 0. We didn't change the arc of that business. But where we can help it grow faster, then we will count the difference in the growth, and that's what goes into the $201 million figure. That is the highest number in TechnoServe's 52-year history, so we're very proud of it. A number on this page we're not proud of and working hard to improve on is the share of our clients who are women. That was 37% last year, which was down 1 or 2 percentage points from the year before. And we have a global target to have 40% of our beneficiaries be women. As soon as we hit that target, I'm going to raise it to 50%. But that's an area where we're working hard to do better. I mentioned that we, since our founding, have focused on business solutions to poverty. So in some sense, we're different than some other nonprofits that work on poverty alleviation. We work with some of the poorest people in the world, but we are against giving things away for free. We are more interested in trying to help these people gain the skills to get into commercial activities that can work on real commercial terms, because we believe that that's what's most likely to scale up and to last over time. You can help people by giving them things, and it's tempting to do that when they're poor, but the problem is as soon as you go away, the help stops, and we're trying to do something more lasting. Because we work in business, most of our staff come from the private sector. We have a lot of former management consultants, but people who come to us from agribusiness, technology, or other industries as well. And we work with many of the world's great corporations, with Coca-Cola, where we did a big program in Kenya, helping them source their fruit juice locally from Kenyan farmers rather than importing it from abroad. With Nestle and Nespresso, with Cargill and many other companies. We don't ask our company partners to be philanthropic. We try to develop a sound business case that we can take to them, which is both good for their business and good for the societies and the communities where they're working. This idea of shared value is something that we try to pursue everywhere. I mentioned earlier, although we're an international organization, and we try to blend the best of international knowledge and best practices and deep knowledge of the local context. It's easy to have a bunch of smart McKinsey consultants draw up fancy frameworks, but what's often harder is to think about how you can take a good piece of analysis and really make it actionable and really make it work in many different environments around the world. And that's where having staff on the ground who are from that country, who speak the local language and understand the local context is, from our point of view, invaluable. Before I talk about entrepreneurship, I just want to share our thinking about women's economic empowerment. And I think we all know that the research is definitive across many, many countries and geographies and many, many socioeconomic groups. We see time and again that when women control income and assets, households do better. I'm sorry to all the men listening on the Zoom and on Facebook, but that data is unquestioned. And So we have a strong focus at TechnoServe in trying to reach more women and help them become economically empowered. There are many statistics that I'm sure many of you are aware of in terms of if we could do better with women, the benefits to society. We list a couple here that if we could have women have the same incentives to participate in the labor force globally, you could see a huge increase in global GDP. Or if you could help women who are farming have just equal access as men have to resources and services, you could see yields up 20 or 30% with a huge decrease in hungry people. So we know what's possible out there, and we're working hard to reach more women. We're doing that in a variety of ways. I just would mention a couple because we work in some settings that are extremely socially conservative. And so in places like that, we really try to engage the entire community, including the men, so that we can help make sure there are spaces for women to participate in our programs. We work with a lot of businesses in looking at their policies and practices to make sure that they're inclusive for women and providing opportunities for women as well as men to be employees and suppliers. I think we've tried to be creative in our training and recruiting to ensure that women can access the skills and knowledge they need, and to have a lot of women on our staff, the old idea that if you want to be it, you have to see it. And so I think that many of our women who are business advisors, who are training farmers, can be role models in their communities. Let me turn now to our work in entrepreneurship, and I'm going to describe it briefly, and then we're really going to dive in and talk about some of the details of how we're trying to help businesses be resilient during this pandemic. I think most of you are aware of the enormous contribution that small and medium enterprises make to the global economy and to global employment. There are an estimated 300 million or so of these types of businesses around the world. They're contributing up to 40% of national GDP and 70% of jobs. On the African continent, that number is closer to 90% of all jobs are created by small and medium enterprises. And I don't have to tell most of you in this audience about the challenges that SMEs face regularly, particularly trouble with access to financing, but accessing services, talent markets, and other things is a challenge as well. I'll go into this in more detail, but we are offering our entrepreneurs specific training and mentoring around the issues that their businesses are facing. For some, we work with a range of business sizes. I'm going to focus my talk today mostly on the larger businesses of the size that OIT is running, but we work with smaller businesses and even some micro businesses as well. And for those very small businesses, often a training on personal effectiveness, helping the entrepreneur understand what she's capable of, can be one of the most powerful tools to provide. Digital tools, obviously now more important than ever. And our programs over the years have shifted focus. We've done less and less training in a classroom and more mentoring with entrepreneurs, really looking at the actual problems in their business. We found that to be a much better way to transfer skills than to do it with abstract concepts or cases in a classroom. At a high level, these four ingredients are what we focus on to make entrepreneurs successful. And it bears saying that we see a wide gap between entrepreneurs in emerging markets and those in developed markets, a gap in competitiveness and productivity. And so because of that lower productivity, we see small and medium enterprises in emerging markets often are not as profitable or as resilient as those we see in developed markets, a gap that we're working to close. This slide shows you a little bit about our theory of change for working with entrepreneurs. And so working across those bubbles, those three colored bubbles, at a high level, we are really trying to develop the capacity of the entrepreneur and her business in the first instance. really trying to promote connections for that entrepreneur and her business, connections to customers, to markets, and to often to local service providers as well. And then we are looking at the larger business ecosystem. Even if you have a highly skilled entrepreneur and you can connect her well, if the business ecosystem is unfriendly and challenging for business, that can be another important barrier. So we're working on all of those levels with a view. The A2F, of course, is access to finance, and the A2M, I think I've got a pointer here, yes, down here, is access to markets. Where we talk about preparing demand in our work with entrepreneurs, this really refers to demand for financing. And we often find entrepreneurs are ready to ask for more financing than they actually need, which can create problems down the road if they've got unnecessarily high levels of debt. So we're working in that sense to try to right-size that, and also to help them learn how best to present themselves to investors in terms of knowing their numbers and their cash flows so they can successfully access financing. We are more of an on-the-ground implementing organization than a policy organization, but we do some ad hoc work on policy with a view to helping to improve the larger business environment. And so that tends to be on looking at policies that are holding business back, that are business unfriendly, that are creating unnecessary barriers, and trying to argue for those to be reduced or eliminated. Our impact in entrepreneurship, I showed you our global impact numbers. Taking that slice out, we worked last year with over 80,000 businesses and entrepreneurs, helped them improve their income by almost $90 million, and mobilized investment in their businesses as well. We're particularly proud of this part at the bottom, that over half of all the businesses we worked with last year are owned by women. That's been a goal of ours, a focus of ours, and we're continuing to push that way. Much of the work we do in Kenya is in the micro retail sector. And in that sector, 92% of our clients are women. So it's a good sector to be in for a number of reasons, in particular because so many women and younger women are active there. In Kenya last year, we worked with over 9,000 businesses. The majority of them were micro entrepreneurs. This was a program we did focusing on young people in rural areas and helping them to often come together and form small groups to start very small businesses so that they can earn something in the rural places where they're living. We also are running a growing program working with Dukas called the Smart Duka program, which is what you see up in the top row there. So let me turn now to COVID and talk about the situation and some of the strategies that we are seeing. And I wanted to share some research with you. This slide is research among ANDI members. ANDI, which stands for the Aspen Network of Development Entrepreneurs, is a terrific organization. And its members are made up of organizations like TechnoServe, organizations that seek to support entrepreneurs and their growth of their businesses around the world. So these are typically implementing organizations, research organizations, and others. And a recent survey of those organizations, as you can see here, showed that the vast majority of them are concerned about believe that up to half of the organizations they're supporting, of the entrepreneurs they're supporting, face a significant risk of failure in the next 1 to 6 months. So I don't think I'm telling you anything you don't already know here, that this pandemic is having a devastating effect on business around the world, and particularly on small and medium businesses. And I probably don't also need to explain any of the main drivers of that to you. Obviously, depressed economic activity, people out of work, having less money, has reduced demand for many goods and services. Businesses facing lots of operational and supply chain challenges from lockdowns and other problems. And certainly the highest degree of uncertainty that I can recall during my career. It's worth calling out the special challenges that women face in this time. Oops, I'm sorry. I'll put them up there. I hope we have some time in the Q&A. I'd like to hear from OIT members the extent to which they face some or all of these challenges. But this is certainly in our clients around the world. We see women entrepreneurs facing a whole extra set of challenges, including the ones that you see here. Another piece of research that I wanted to share with you, this is a research that was done among entrepreneurs, over 350 entrepreneurs, asking them what sort of assistance they most needed to help them manage their business through this time of COVID. And the conventional wisdom is that businesses need financing now, and that certainly is true. But it's interesting to see how important some other types of support are here. So these blue bars are when the entrepreneurs say it's extremely important. The yellow bar is when they say it's moderately important. So on the far left here, you can see that accessing government support is seen to be very important, or important by over 90%. And a lot of that is about financing, certainly. But then you see the rest of it in terms of pivoting the business model, in terms of careful management of the finances in a time of crisis, in terms of dealing with operational or HR issues, and the supply chain, all came as very important for the entrepreneurs in this survey. So let me begin now to provide some more detail about how we are working with entrepreneurs in this time. And I hope you're still hearing me. My slides, oh, there we go. Seems to have seized up. Let me just check. Can everybody hear me okay still?
Yes.
Great. Yes,
okay.
We can. Mm-hmm.
Terrific. I'm going to show you, we published a toolkit recently. It's free, it's online on our website. I'll show it to you a little bit later. But I wanted to walk you through a couple of the highlights of it here. Because in our traditional work with entrepreneurs before the time of COVID, our focus has been on growth, growth, growth. How do you grow your business? How fast can you grow it? How can you get to the point where you need to be hiring more employees? How can you get more customers and more business? In this crisis, we have shifted, and we have pivoted to working with all of our entrepreneurs about how do you survive this crisis? How do you keep your business viable during this crisis? So that you can have a viable business when we come out of this crisis, and we will come out of it. I wish I could tell you when, but I know we will, and that the business can still be viable and alive. And this mindset for survival, I mean, this sounds a little soft to a group of business people, but I know that OIT is working on this as well, because we discussed it the other day. One of the most pressing issues is that entrepreneurs have new emotional needs when faced with a crisis like COVID. Entrepreneurs are like the rest of us and can often feel overwhelmed or distracted and defeated. And this kind of emotional strain can lead to business challenges, as entrepreneurs and staff can often face an analysis paralysis that can prevent them or slow them from making key decisions. And so I know that OIT is providing psychological support to their members, which is exactly the right thing to be doing. We're trying to do that as well. And trying, I think, to create a safe space for entrepreneurs to share their concerns with each other. Peer-to-peer support from entrepreneurs, in our experience, has proven to be particularly important. Having a clear picture of a business's financial position and being able to make sound decisions based on the numbers is always an important skill for any entrepreneur, but it becomes absolutely indispensable in a crisis like this one. And so we recommend that programs that are working with entrepreneurs now are really focusing in on evaluating the financial status of the business in the current situation, particularly strong focus on liquidity, analyzing the business's break-even point, doing some scenario planning with the entrepreneur to look at the financial impact of different scenarios, drilling down on cash flow, looking at measures to improve cash flow. Can you cut some non-essential costs? Can you reduce the markup for selected products and services to maximize sales? Can you negotiate more flexible terms with suppliers? A whole lot of strategies in there. Certainly a focus on government assistance and what's possible. I think the Kenyan government is probably going to be better than many others on the continent in terms of being able to provide some support to the sector in a more coherent way than a lot of other African governments. Let's look at the banking sector as well and see what banks are offering during this crisis. Are they making repayment terms more flexible or doing other things? The issue of layoffs inevitably comes up, and it's often an excruciating decision for entrepreneurs who are struggling to keep their business alive. And to the maximum extent possible, we work with our clients to try to find ways to reallocate their staff to new and vital roles so that they can keep their staff on staff. We work with some people running restaurants who are reallocating their wait staff to be now delivery staff so that they can avoid losing those personnel and jeopardizing the long-term viability of the business. Revisiting the business model to identify new revenue opportunities is another essential thing that we are preaching during this crisis. And, fortunately, entrepreneurs are very entrepreneurial. And they have shown us time and time again a really remarkable ability to identify new channels, approaches, products and services that meet the needs and the purchasing abilities of consumers in this crisis. And so we recommend strongly that programs working with entrepreneurs in this time encourage this kind of innovation. Entrepreneurs in our programs have shifted from products and service lines with falling demand to ones that are less affected by the crisis. And this often happens between related businesses, like a sit-down restaurant shifting to food delivery, textile manufacturer beginning production of masks. We've supported someone running a small hotel getting repurposed as a COVID quarantine center. But businesses, if they have the resources and skills, can even do a switch between sectors, I think. We work with a business in Nicaragua that manufactures handicrafts, but they've started producing food when the demand for their crafts has fallen. It's essential to look for these new sales and distribution channels where you're able to reach consumers in spite of curfews and travel restrictions and other challenges. And consumers are valuing safety now. So if you can position your business as a safe place to shop, micro retailers, for example, we've encouraged them to move away from cash and start using more e-payments, making hand sanitizer available in their shops, things like that. So sticking with this theme and going a little more in detail, I want to show you a tool we use with our entrepreneurs and walk you through it quickly. We call this a business model canvas, and it is effectively a visual representation of a business plan. And it lets you see the essential areas of your business and how they relate to each other. And in working through this, and this is often something that our entrepreneurs sort of keep on the wall. So a 20-page, a 40-page business plan is terrific, but having something on your wall that you look at every day that gives you a visual representation of that plan can be very helpful. And so I'm going to walk you quickly through this with a view to thinking about you're in a crisis now, and how do you think about that in the various parts of your business. So we start over on the right around the customer. And thinking about existing and new customer segments that you can sell to. So are there new segments that you can reach as a result of this crisis? And often consumers are demanding more essentials. So if you are running a bakery and doing very high-end cakes, as one of our clients has been doing, should you pivot and start selling simpler things like bread that may be seen as more essential in this time. The customer relationship is changing due to all of the lockdowns and travel restrictions and curfews and things. Are you active enough online? Can you be on social media and interacting with your clients in a different way there? Are your sales channels evolving to keep pace with during the pandemic? Are you able to sell on the internet? Can you deliver your goods? Are there other new sales points you can access? All sort of leading up to what's core at the center of any business, the value proposition, and looking at your existing and considering new products, really being cutthroat about taking products off the market that are not in demand right now, thinking about if you need to adjust sizes, prices, or otherwise to reflect your consumers' reduced purchasing power and safety. Again, safety sells right now, both for your customers and for your staff. Getting into the how, then hygiene protocols, whether that's in a shop if you have one, or whether that's in a factory or manufacturing space if you have one of those. Thinking about operational hours, how you may need to adjust them, how you can make remote work viable in your company. In terms of resources, certainly, as I mentioned earlier, trying to keep the staff in the business, and they're an essential resource for you later. Can you repurpose them out of jobs that you need less of now into other roles? And other partners. Are there government programs? Are there things that banks are offering? Are there other aid programs? Are there NGOs like TechnoServe and others that are offering some support? For businesses the size of the ones that the typical OIT member is running, I would really focus on cutting unessential costs. The challenges faced by larger businesses like yours as compared to some of the micro businesses is you have a larger set of costs and of recurring costs typically. And so to be to what might in a normal time look like a reasonable cost, I would really, we really encourage our clients to drill down on these costs and see where cuts are possible. Then on revenue, some of our clients are doing very creative schemes where people can prepay for a service that they will take advantage of later. We have some clients in the hospitality industry, which is devastated all around the world. So they are selling hotel rooms for use in 6 months from now at a very reduced rate, but they're getting that cash in the door now, which obviously they need. Our approach works. We have data from other past crises, which shows that businesses are able to survive. And this is some brand new data from Mozambique in a program we run there called Business Women Connect. These are micro businesses owned and run by women. They are small retail posts, hair salons, small sort of bars and food shops. And you can see that in early April, about 45% of these businesses, I think there's 144 businesses that we're working with in that program. The gray bit were closed, the orange bit were open, but expecting to close. So in total, almost half of all the businesses were closed or expecting to close. It's surprising how fast that happened, how fast things moved, and how these lockdowns generated a lot of negative knock-on economic effects. 2 months later, after work which was really done remotely by the business advisors there, phone calls, text messages, videos where people had access to a smartphone or a computer, audio messages, our team helped these entrepreneurs find ways to adapt their businesses to the situation. They diversified their lines of business. Those running small bars started selling groceries. They were able to negotiate discounts, postponing rent payments. They were able to shift to different kinds of products. The restaurants began selling more essential food products. There is data from right now and from other countries and other times and other crises that shows that this approach can help businesses survive. Just a couple more slides. This is a very important one to remind the entrepreneurs, and we all need to remind ourselves, this crisis will end. It is not always going to be like this. And there will be a time when the medical crisis is going to abate, the lockdowns are going to be loosened. But at that time, we are not going to go back to the way it was, at least not immediately. The world will have changed. And it's important for entrepreneurs to remain flexible and continue this process that they've done during the crisis of thinking about their business and thinking about how to adapt it, to continue to do that and to imagine what the new normal is going to look like. So while it's impossible to predict exactly how the world is going to be after the pandemic, we're encouraging our clients to keep these trends in mind. And McKinsey has called this crisis an inflection point for the shift to digital commerce channels. And we believe strongly that applies equally to emerging markets where the digital revolution has been slower to reach many businesses. So both consumers and businesses in emerging markets have become more comfortable with e-commerce over the past weeks and months. And it's important not to overlook those channels during the recovery. Similarly, many businesses have been forced to do remote work, including TechnoServe, and that is something that's likely here to stay in various forms. The Financial Times is reporting that disruptions in the global trade generated by the pandemic have led a lot of policymakers and business leaders to prioritize developing local supply chains. And in many emerging economies, this is going to create new opportunities for small and medium-sized firms that can make connections into these new networks. And lastly, in the recovery phase, as customers sort of still have COVID at top of mind, it seems to be creating more consumer thinking about both safety and sustainability, which we see as a positive trend. And then a more active role for the state. It's likely that public sector assistance and global aid is going to become available to help micro and small businesses navigate and recover. So we're encouraging our clients to be aware of that as well. A lot of this thinking is available in this report called Supporting Business Survival and Recovery. This is available free of charge on the TechnoServe website. So I've gone very fast through a lot of material, but I would encourage you to take a look at that report and download it. I think that you may find some things of interest. I've gone over the time I was planning for, so I think let me stop there because I'm eager to get to question and answer and hear what's on people's mind. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We'll go to question and answer, and I think Anne will lead the session.
All right, thank you, Carol. Thank you, William, very much for all that information shared with us, really and really specifically in Africa, and sharing with us about the survival toolkit, because I think all of us in business are really interested to know how do we survive and how do we move on to the new normal. So we do have a few questions here. So one of the questions that we have right now is from Susan. And her question is this, William. Are there plans for the US government in supporting SMEs in Kenya, e-commerce skills and digital transformation strategy adoption? The question is around what is the position of AGOA, right? And where can we get more information about FAs, so free trade agreements between the US and Kenya?
I am probably the wrong person to answer that question. TechnoServe is an independent organization. We're really pleased to receive some funding from the US government, but I can't speak to US government policy. I'm not sure if any others on the call want to address that.
I will. I can just briefly mention a little bit about AGOA and the free trade agreement. I can't. I will just say what I've heard the ambassador say. I'm not going to be speaking necessarily from my own knowledge, but what I have heard him say is that the new free trade agreement will maintain Kenya's access to U.S. markets that it now has under AGOA, and it will actually make Kenya more competitive and stronger economically by linking to the US economy. And it will help Kenya access more market share and get more value for their products, and also get access to cheaper products. So to find more information, I think I would just stay tuned and listen to people a little higher pay grade than me when they make announcements about the free trade agreement. The first part of the question, US government support of SMEs in Kenya. I'm actually not very familiar with the digital transformation strategy adoption. That's a new term for me. I have to say I am working in the public diplomacy field in the embassy, so my background is not very strong in business. But one thing that at least our office does is that we connect entrepreneurs from the United States and from Kenya in many different ways, this being one of them. And another way that we do that is by a few programs that we have each year to send entrepreneurs from Kenya to the United States to learn. One of those programs I think that has been very successful is the Tech Women program. And that pairs women in startups in the technical field, usually or mostly in STEM fields, with mentors working in Silicon Valley. And they do a mentorship program for 6 weeks in Silicon Valley, learning from women entrepreneurs in the United States, and then also teaching about how businesses work in Kenya. And that is one way that the US government does support entrepreneurs in the technical field. So I'll leave it at that. Back to you, Ian.
All right. Thank you, Devin, for that. All right, so we'll go to the next question for you, William. And this question is really around, this is a question that was asked. How can we download the kit? Please share the link. So I'm assuming they're talking about the survival toolkit that you mentioned. How can someone download that information from TechnoServe?
Sure. We can send the link out. It's pretty easy. Our website is technoserve.org. So if you go to that website, there's a search bar, and the name of the study is, let me find it while I'm talking to you here. It's called Supporting Business Survival and Recovery. So probably if you do a Google search and say TechnoServe Supporting Business Survival and Recovery, it will come up. But certainly if you go to the TechnoServe website and enter Supporting Business Survival and Recovery in the search, you'll find that, that study, which is available free of charge as a download.
All right. Thank you, William, for that. So, there's a link specifically for that survival toolkit. All right. Now, the next question is from Blessing, and the question is, how does the Prosper Africa work with SMEs in Africa? How does the Prosper Africa work with SMEs in Africa?
I am not sure about Prosper Africa. I'm sorry. I don't know if another panelist is more familiar with it.
Okay. Maybe Blessing, you can clarify about that question, the next question. So the next question is from Josek, who asks, I recently ventured into individual and organization capacity building with this pandemic. It is very difficult to get clients. How can I create a link and connect to new customers?
You know, I would go back to some of the advice that we looked at in that business plan canvas, and one of the things that we focus on there is where are the customers? Where are they today? What are they focused on? What are their needs? And what's their purchasing ability? Because it may be substantially diminished from where it was just a couple of months ago. And try to tailor your offering. Start on the right side of that business canvas. Try to find the customers you think you can reach, and then really try to target your offering as much as you can to their needs, their focus right now, which may have moved quite significantly over the last couple of months. We're seeing people with reduced purchasing power, with more of a focus on safety, with more focus on the essentials right now. And so that's sort of at a high level without knowing your business any better. My advice, you know, also useful to think about different segments and are there different places to sell? We've been supporting a business, again, around the size of the businesses that OIT members are running. These are, for our clients, larger businesses. And she was, a woman there was running a business doing about $15,000 US in monthly turnover. So it was a good sized business. And she was selling a lot to the hospitality industry. So her sales went from $15,000 a month to zero in April of this year. And one of the ways that she's recovering is selling to a new segment. She had not sold to government before, but got some support to think about where some of her services were needed in government, got herself educated about how to answer government tenders, and was able to win some government business and get her revenue back up in I think it was in May, back up to $10,000 a month. So it's, you know, she's still down by almost a third in her revenue, but she's well up from zero. So I would try those two strategies. Where are your customers now, and are there other different customers who may be purchasing now?
Great, thank you for that information, William. So the next question is from Teresa, and this is her question. Revisiting the business model may mean pivoting or doing something completely different, right? What happens to the brand, your business brand? What happens to that? Do you do a name change? Do you drop what you've been providing before and start afresh with a registration of a new business? Is pivoting going into something totally different make you a jack of all trades and therefore contributes to brand erosion? So the main thing here I'm saying is really when you are looking at your business model again and you're really known for doing something and you've developed a brand, and then now with this new crisis you change it, what happens? Is that a good business? Is that a good way of doing business? And what are the right things or the right steps to take to ensure that you stay in business for the long run?
I'm reluctant to give you too much specific advice without knowing your particular business, but I would say in general, we would probably advise you against spending time and effort on a rebrand. If you're pivoting, if you're introducing a new product or a new service, you can do it under the umbrella of your existing brand. You have customers who know you, who trust you. And so I think it's rather than putting time and energy during a crisis at a time when your time and energy is really at a premium and there are a lot of calls on it, rather than devoting that to any sort of rebranding, I think we would generally recommend you devote more of your efforts to making sure your customers are aware that you have this new offering. And talking about why it's good, why it's useful, why they need it, rather than rebranding and just putting it under the umbrella. You know, to the extent that your business is really going over the medium term through a huge transformation, then perhaps you might think about a rebrand at that point. But again, I would, you know, what we talked about before, this is a time to focus on every unnecessary cost, to take every cost that's not absolutely essential out of your business. And so I wouldn't think that a rebrand at this time would be a good thing or an essential thing to spend your money on generally.
All right.
Teresa's
Great.
nodding, so I feel
William,
like I've got that answer right. Sorry, Ann.
Right. Thanks for that. So the overall is you don't need to really spend so much money rebranding, but you can still take a different direction and support your customers by seeing what they really need at this time. All right. So William, we have a question from Facebook. We have someone who has asked this question. Small business owners have been hit hard, especially those who depend on. What are some things we can do to mitigate the situation?
Yeah, I want to just empathize for
People
a second.
Who depend on making money.
I'm sorry, Ann, what'd you say?
Sorry, no, I was just emphasizing they focus their money or their revenues from exports, so they've been really affected. What can they do to mitigate the situation?
Yeah, well, I just want to empathize for a minute. Small business owners have been hit very, very hard by this. Can you hear me okay? Yes, okay. And so we are aware that there are small business owners all over the world who are really suffering and really in crisis. And again, we have seen that with a careful analysis and often some help and guidance, there are ways out of this. I would go back again to that business canvas that I showed earlier, which is really just thinking about the different parts of your business and think again about your existing customers and where their needs may have moved to. Think about if there are new customer segments that you can reach with your business. Try to think about where you may shift or move your business a little, and then thinking about how can you keep your key staff. Are there areas that you can reassign them to? Are there tweaks to your business model? Are there any costs that are not absolutely necessary right now that you can take out? Are there strategies you can employ to have some cash coming in the door? We would often advise people to sell some of their products right now at cost, or sometimes slightly below cost if you have to, at a discount, to have some cash come in the door. The focus has got to be on staying viable, on staying alive. You're not going to be able to come back better, and you're not going to be able to grow when we move out of this if your business isn't alive. So some of those strategies that we walk through, looking through that business canvas, and it's different, obviously, for every business and every situation. And so to the extent that you can find help, if there's an OIT chapter where you are, I've heard about all the kinds of terrific support that OIT is providing its members. If there is a TechnoServe program or a program from another organization which is supporting entrepreneurs, often just someone else to look at your situation with a fresh set of eyes and help provide some advice and think about some of the options that are open to you. And particularly if there are people who can help you, make sure that you're aware of and able to access the resources that are available. Government programs are coming online. Is your local government providing any help to small businesses that you can access? What are the banks doing? What can you renegotiate on your own with your landlord or others? There is more flexibility out there now than a lot of businesses think. And so looking at all of those options on how you can manage your costs, how you can push some costs off and delay them, what you can do to get some cash in the door, but certainly to think about where you can take the business, where are there opportunities, and I would focus on the adjacent ones. Yes, some businesses can move into something totally different, from making handicrafts to selling food, but I think if you can find something that is adjacent to your core business, where there may be more demand right now, that is where I'd encourage you to focus. It's rather generic advice, but I hope you can find someone who can spend a little more time with you to dig into the specifics of your business. It's a tough time, but we have seen small businesses, as I showed you in Mozambique, we have seen even very small businesses with very few resources able to do that shift and able to stay alive. And that's the name of the game right now, is stay alive.
All right, stay alive, stay alive. So get cash in and manage your costs, but stay alive. All right, yes. Thank you for that, William. So the next question really is around agribusiness. What advice would you give someone who's in agribusiness right now? I know it's general, but what question would you give around agribusiness?
Well, I am somewhat optimistic about agribusiness. Most governments have declared agriculture to be a priority sector, which is entirely correct and appropriate in my view. Some of them were slow to do that, slower than they should have been, but most governments in most emerging markets have made this declaration. And I think they are aware of the importance of agriculture. Even the politicians are aware of it because it affects politicians, right? Food shortages are bad for politicians in power. They care about them. We've seen food shortages already in many markets, and we've seen them in markets where there's actually plenty of food. This is not like 2008, where there were food shortages and there literally wasn't enough food. In many of the markets around the world, harvests have been good, the food is there. The reason there are food shortages is because of the problems that the various businesses working in the local food system are having. And that ranges from aggregators and traders to food processors, even down to micro retailers, even down to the dukas, to the corner stores where poor people are going to buy their flour 1 cup at a time. And so there is a strong national interest in having those agribusinesses able to work. And they've experienced a range of challenges similar to a lot of businesses. The lockdowns were hard, curfews were hard, they've had access, they're having trouble accessing labor, accessing the supplies they need. But I think there's going to be strong demand in that sector as everybody focuses on having the ag sector continue to work and having that food system work better than it is right now, unsticking it. That's something we're very focused on as TechnoServe, and I know a lot of governments are. So my advice to you in thinking about agribusiness would be quite different than other businesses. There, I would not counsel you to get out your business canvas and think about new customers and adjacent businesses. There, I think your core business, particularly as it's playing a role in making the local food system work, is going to be seen as essential. There's going to be demand for it. And I would focus then more on the operational challenges that you're probably facing. If you're in the food processing business, can you get the inputs you need? How can you make your supply chain work better for you? Can you access the labor you need? Those sorts of operational challenges that a lot of agribusinesses are facing today.
Okay, thank you. So operations, demand is there for food, but the operation and the value chain is what they need to focus on. All right, great. So William, the next question is really about what support is there for SMEs in the education sector?
For SMEs in the education sector?
Education sector, yes.
My colleagues from OWIT or others may be better placed to answer, or we may, I don't know if it's possible to invite my colleague from Nairobi to join the conversation if she's in this meeting. My colleague Alice Waweru oversees our work with entrepreneurs in Kenya. And she may have some insight into that I don't have. I see that she's now in the meeting. Thank you for inviting her in. I wanted in any event to make sure that Alice was connected with you, Carolyn, and others at OWIT. Alice, as I said earlier, is the brains behind our entrepreneurship organization. And most of the things I've said today, Alice has been teaching me. So she may have information that I don't have about SMEs in the education sector in Kenya, if that's the question. In general, our work is sort of sector agnostic. We're looking for the right kind of entrepreneur with helping her develop the right business plan, and whether that's in education or retail or hospitality or other sectors, we're agnostic about that. But Alice, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
So thank you so much, Will, and thank you so much, OWIT, for the invitation. Great presentation from Will. Happy to have my CEO speaking to the women in Kenya, whom we are very passionate about in our work in the micro retail sector, a sector that has a significant number, a very big number of women who are driving the economies of our country. So I'm happy to connect with the OWIT members even after this presentation. Thank you, Will.
Thank you, Alice.
Yes, thank you, Alice, very much for that. And we'll be sure to connect with you here in Kenya with Owit Nairobi. All right. So, William, it looks like we're running out of time, but I have a few questions. One of them is really specific around engagement with customers. How do you engage differently with customers to maintain consistent customer base? You've emphasized on customer relations. How do you propose that business people do that during this time?
Yeah, it's looking different, isn't it? And you know, I spoke earlier about the move to digital outreach to customers and even buying and selling online. That's been something that's been slower to come to emerging markets. But if there's any silver lining in a terrible pandemic like this, it's some of these things are making all of us in different ways move faster. And so I would think about, and if you don't have young people working in your organization, I would get a young person in as a volunteer or an intern, because they're digital natives and they're fluent in all of these social media. But depending on your customer base, your customers are typically there. They may be on Facebook, they may be on WhatsApp. I'm not sure market to market which one is more popular. But I would look at opportunities to connect with them online, remind them about your business, remind them about your offering. And then again, the old adage of focusing on their need. So there may be deliveries, if that's possible and appropriate for the kind of business you're running. That may be an interaction possibility. Old-fashioned calling people on the phone. You've got to really be creative and energetic in terms of how you connect with your customers and think a little bit outside of the box so that you can remind them that you exist, remind them of your updated offerings. There may be a discount on this. There may be a new product offering here that you can tell them about. And think creatively about the channels, including online. The odds are that they are there in some fashion. And whether it's something as simple as a blast of text messages, or whether it's something more sophisticated, a meetup on Facebook or something like that, there are a lot of opportunities. And if you're like me and as old as ancient and I am, then you need someone young to advise you on using social media effectively.
All right, so just familiarize yourself with digital, and if you can't, have someone support you, especially young people, because they are digital natives. So that's critical. And just make sure your customers or your business is top of mind for your customers when you're supporting their needs. All right. So with that, William, we just have the last question just because of time, but I do have to say there are different comments that are coming in. I see Melak is saying that she's really enjoying the discussion. People have really enjoyed this discussion, gotten a lot of information around the survival kit, especially, and also about the business canvas. In fact, that's the last question. So where Joseph is asking, between the business canvas and the lean canvas, which one is preferred, or are they applicable in different situations? Could you please clarify between the two, the business canvas and the lean canvas?
Yeah, the business canvas is really a distillation of a business plan. So I don't think it takes the place of developing a really thought through plan for your business. But the challenge that you face now in the middle of a crisis like this is how do you adapt? How are you nimble? How can you pivot? How can you think about new customer segments? How can you think about updating your offerings? And there, I think the business canvas offers you a great tool. So it is probably the tool that we would recommend for this moment. And I would recommend that you put it, as a number of our entrepreneurs do, on the wall of your office, on your bulletin board. And so you're seeing it every day, because you really are seeing how the different parts of your business relate to each other. And that's really something you need to, on a very regular basis now, be revisiting and thinking about how you want to adjust those for the changing circumstances you find yourself in. And unfortunately, it looks like we still have at least some months ahead of dealing with this COVID crisis. And I'm hopeful about the scientists providing us with some therapies and some, I hope, a vaccine soon, but we have some months to go, it certainly looks. And so I think to be able to look at your business every day and be able to think about those interrelationships and where you might find a cost savings or where you might find a tweak about how you communicate with your customer or how and where you sell we're finding a lot of value from that in this environment.
All right. Thank you, William, for all the information that you've shared with us today. I know everyone has appreciated it. We've all learned. I'd like to go ahead and just introduce our Vice President of Programs here at OIT Nairobi. Her name is Teresa Lubano, and she'll go ahead and give a vote of thanks. Thank you, William.
Thank you very much for an exciting talk. But before I actually finish with a vote of thanks, I'd like to invite Devin or anyone from the US Embassy to say a word, because you're actually on this webinar and we'd like to hear your voice. So perhaps a couple of seconds just to comment or share something with our audience. Devin?
Yes, happy to. Thank you, Teresa. And thank you to OIT for partnering with us today to host this great webinar. It's been really insightful, and that is thank you to William Warshauer. Thank you for taking your time today to share your expertise, not only with the members of OIT here today, but also with the greater audience who's been joining and listening in and asking a lot of really good questions. Actually, before I finish my thanks as well, I just wanted to mention that a lot of the questions that I saw come in had to do with some of the US support for Kenya and the value of the United States and the Kenyan relationship. And I want to put in a little plug for a study that just came out. And that is a study from the College of William and Mary. They have a research lab called Aid Data, and they actually went through every single aspect of the US-Kenya relationship, including trade and including trade policy, and the impact of US NGOs and US businesses and the value that they've created in Kenya, and actually quantified all of that information. So we can also post the link to that study as well, so that people can look at that later to see and maybe answer some of their questions. So with that, I just wanted to put in a last plug, but we really thank all of you for joining us here today and for being with us. I know I've learned a lot, and I hope you all got a lot out of it as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Devin. Anyone else? Christopher? I see Melissa, Alice, Lydia, and Halima. If we could just hear your voice.
Thanks everybody for joining us today. And thank you again for OIT and so many of the alumni of US government exchanges who make up OIT. There are a number of different great programs, some of which Devin mentioned earlier, and we're pleased to work with our alumni and to support these sorts of conversations and exchanges between the United States and Kenya. And just a note from me that the study that Devin mentioned, I put a link in the comments here. And for those of you watching on Facebook Live, there is another video from a previous event in which we introduced this topic. So if anyone's interested in a discussion like this about the full range of interactions and exchanges between Kenya and the United States, that is available on our Facebook page. So please have a look there for more on the study and a conversation about that study. Hopefully maybe that will answer some of your questions, I hope, but there were a lot of great questions. So thank you again to everybody for your time, for William and joining us, and for everybody's great questions and enthusiasm today.
Thank you, Christopher.
I'd also like to mention, so we also have the US speaker programs, which of course this is one of our US speaker programs, which brings the US and Kenya culture and exchange of information together. And so I would be remiss in not mentioning the the help of the US State Department Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs. So we have Melissa Dilber on the line. I'm not sure if you want to say hello.
Yeah.
Oh, you're on mute. Sorry.
You're on mute.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Devin. And thank you to everyone for working together so seamlessly to bring this program to life. My favorite part of being on this team in the Office of the U.S. Speaker Program is that every day I learn something absolutely new. And so today, thank you to everybody, participants and panelists alike, for teaching me a lot and bringing me into your world to see that we're all kind of working together to make things the best that we can right now. So thank you all so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Melissa.
Hello.
Yes, Alice, please go ahead.
Okay, great. I think I just wanted to say that such a great opportunity to bring the entrepreneurs together, to share knowledge, to learn from one another. In times of crisis, it makes it even worse when an entrepreneur is navigating the crisis alone. As we always tell the micro retailers, as much as they are small, the problem is really not being small. The problem may be small and being alone. So, Owit, thanks so much for bringing the entrepreneurs together. This will go a long way in helping them navigate the crisis. Thank you.
Thank you. That's really lovely. Thank you, Alice. And finally, Halima.
Which I will mention, Halima has been doing a lot of work and has done a lot to set up this program. So thank you, Halima, as well.
Great.
Okay. Thank you, Devin. Right. No, it was a great program, and we're happy to work with Owit. I was there when Owit started in many years ago. And we've been working with tech women. Alice Waweru, I don't know whether you remember me. This is Halima. We've done a few programs with TechnoServe, yes.
Yeah, the exchange program in Connecticut, I remember very well.
There you go. Even Pauline is listening to us somewhere. We sent her the link, yeah. So, so we'll be working a lot more with you now. Now we're back to business, yeah.
Great.
And I know TechnoServe has been doing a great program. I remember during the 2008 post-election violence, and you helped SMEs in Mathare and other informal settlements in Nairobi and rural areas to revamp their businesses, which were either banned or, yeah. So I know TechnoServe does a lot of work there. So we're looking forward to working with you again. I'm glad to see you, actually. I'm happy to see you.
Happy to see you too.
You're right.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, my role is very simple. Mine is just to thank everyone. This has been a lovely session. I'd like to start by thanking Owit and the US Embassy and Marafiki, to be specific, for hosting this session. It's been a wonderful session. I think it was a nice surprise to actually have Ambassador of the US to actually just share with us the delightful video that he did. That was really nice. I'd also like to thank William, of course. William, you're a wonderful speaker. You've done a good presentation on TechnoServe. I did know about TechnoServe here, but I really didn't know what they do. And I think your work is bang on, SDG #1, and you're doing a wonderful job. And we're happy that you actually did share with us a little about how to sort of be resilient. And this is definitely a beneficial topic for all our members who are listening, and of course the guests. I'd also like to thank Devin for moderating from the US Embassy end. Fantastic moderator. Thank you for pulling, of course, William and everyone else from your end, together with your team, that is Alice, Halima, and the US Embassy, and Christopher, and Melissa, of course, to make this a success. I'd also like to thank Owit, the president, for actually sort of initiating and being the liaison, as well as the team at Owit, the administrative team that was there in terms of planning this session. I'd also like to thank, of course, all the panelists who are here, as well as the OWIT members who have attended continuously all our first, at least most of them plan to attend our meetings, which are held every first Tuesday of the month. And this one has been great as well in terms of viewership, both on social media as well as on this webinar via Zoom. I'd also like to thank particularly guests. I know most of them have actually accessed the link from the social media handles, as well as they're actually on this Zoom call. And mine is to say, you're not the last, but sort of as much as you're the last, you're not the least. We really are grateful, and we hope this meeting, this webinar has been beneficial to you. Thank you very much from me as well. I really loved this session, and I'd like to wish everyone in East Africa who's watching a good afternoon, and everyone in the US, I guess, a good morning. Bye. Yeah. Yeah.